Hey everybody, I'm Logan Alec. I'm a CPA. I own Choice Tax Relief, where we help folks who owe the IRS at least $10,000 in back taxes or who have multiple years of unfiled tax returns. And today I'm talking about IRS Letter 1058. This is a nasty one. If you got this letter, you need to watch this video until the end, and you probably need to call us here at Choice Tax Relief for a free consultation. In this video, I'm going to go over the IRS Letter 1058 in detail, every section of it, so you know exactly what you're looking at. And I'm going to tell you exactly what you should do if you received IRS Letter 1058. But first, I'm going to tell you what this letter is and why you received it. So IRS Letter 1058, you know it's Letter 1058 because it tells you right here at the top of the screen, is the final notice that an IRS revenue officer will send you before that revenue officer starts seizing your assets and income to satisfy your tax debt. There are many kinds of other notices and letters that the IRS sends out pertaining to your tax debt, and those may or may not mean that forced collection activity is imminent. This one does. This one means that you have been assigned to a dedicated collections official at the IRS, a revenue officer, whose job it is to make sure that you pay what is, in their estimation, your fair share, typically what you owe them. This letter is typically sent via certified mail. You can see that here. It is actually the IRS is legally required to send you this letter via certified mail. That is in the statute. And you can see what the title of the notice is here. It's your notice of intent to levy and your right to a collection due process here. And you can see final notice right there. This is the end of the line for you to make a deal with the IRS before they start taking your stuff. And the purpose of this notice isn't only your final notice of the IRS's intent to levy you or to take your stuff, but it's also your notice of your right to a collection due process hearing, which is a very important tool that it is likely you will need to use to avoid the IRS taking your stuff. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. So that's what this notice is and what its purpose is. Why is the revenue officer sending you this letter? The IRS addresses this in the next section in fairly simple language. In their mind, it's because you owe them taxes and you still haven't paid it, despite the IRS having asked you in the past to pay the tax. And not only that, but the IRS is actually required to send you this notice before they start taking your stuff. This says this letter is your notice of intent to levy under Internal Revenue Code Section 6331 and your right to request a collection due process hearing or equivalent hearing with the IRS Independent Office of Appeals under Internal Revenue Code Section 6330A. So, what do these code sections say? 6331 says that no less than 30 days before the IRS's levy action occurs, the IRS must give you notice of its intent to levy you. Levy is just a word for taking your stuff. 6330A says that no less than 30 days before the levy action occurs, the IRS must notify you of your right to request a collection due process hearing, a CDP hearing. I'll talk more about that later in this video. But for now, let's keep just going through this letter section by section. This is the what you need to do section. This is what a better description of this section would be is what the IRS wants you to do right now. The IRS wants you to please pay in full today, right? That's like the best case scenario for them, right? You pay everything you owe today. You make your check or money order to U.S. Treasury, or you pay online at irs.gov/payments. Okay, yeah, go ahead, taxpayer. Just pay this entire $350,000 now. That's what you need to do. And additional penalty and interest will be charged if you pay after this date. This is a little, I don't want to say deceiving because they do tell you about other options later in the letter, but if you just read this, what do I need to do? Oh my gosh, I need to pay it by this date. You have options. This is really just what the IRS would prefer that you do right now, is pay what they think you owe in full. But you have options, and one of them is to request that CDP hearing, that collection due process hearing. Okay? Due process. What's due process, right? It comes from the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. Okay? No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property, right? And in this case, we're talking about the government taking your property without due process of law, right? So it is your right to say, time out, IRS collections official, time out, revenue officer. I'm going to contest this proposed levy action and make my case in an independent venue before an appeals officer in the IRS Independent Office of Appeals, whose job it is to make sure that your due process rights here have not been infringed upon. Okay? And this is how you request this appeals hearing. Basically, you fill out form 12153. I'm going to create a video about how to do that separately. I don't want to take time from the 1058 here. I will be creating this video about how best practices for completing the 12153 request for a CDP hearing in the near future. Now, very, 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 very important is the deadline to request the CDP hearing. You have 30 days from the date of this notice to request your CDP hearing, okay? And they tell you the deadline right here. So in this case, 30 days after January 30th, 2025 was March 1st, 2025, okay? Now, if you're mailing a request, they're going to go by your postmark date, similar to a tax return, okay? It says a request received by the IRS will generally be considered timely if the request is properly addressed with correct postage and postmarked by USPS within the 30 days from the date of this letter, right? So if you go to the post office, get your 12153, you're mailing it to the right address, and you go to the post office on March 1st in this case, and it's postmarked March 1st, you're still good, even though the IRS is actually going to receive it after March 1st, right? And you could fax it all the way up to March 1st. Sometimes these notices of your right to a CDP hearing have a fax number in there. Sometimes they don't. If they don't, I would recommend just mailing it so you get that postmark date on there. Sometimes we will just fax it, right? Because our CRM, it gives us a fax confirmation that this was actually sent and it was, to the revenue officer's fax number. But if you're in doubt, go to the post office, get the postmark right on there. I'd actually recommend getting certified mail with return receipt as well. Okay. Now, I don't want to make this video all about CDP hearings, but what's going to happen at the CDP hearing? So it's typically going to be over telephone, and you or your representative are going to propose some alternative to the IRS's proposed levy action, right? That could be an installment agreement. It could be like a hardship, a currently not collectible. It could be a hardship-based installment agreement. It could be, hey, I'm going for an offer in compromise here, right? But it has to make sense. Your proposed alternative has to make sense. It has to be borne out by your financial statement, your 433, by your bank statements, by your pay stubs, right? You can't tell the appeals officer, yeah, I'm protesting the IRS's proposed levy action because I want to go for an OIC and because I only owe $100,000, but I have millions of dollars sitting in some stock account. They're not going to buy that, right? They're going to say, just pay us out of that, right? That's probably what they're going to say. So you want to make sure you know what you're doing if you have a revenue officer at all, and especially before you request a CDP hearing, or hire somebody who does know what they're doing. Okay. Next, the IRS tells you what they're going to do if you don't deal with this, right? if you don't strike some deal with the IRS or pay off your balance due. They say they're going to file a notice of federal tax lien, okay, at any time to protect the government's interest. This is simply a public notice filed in county records, right, basically stating that you owe the United States this money. Okay, I'll pull one up, right? So here's what one looks like. It's just a form filed in county records, in this case, Register Office, New York County, New York, right? So that's what it looks like. It shows, the amount you owe, right? The total down there. I'm going to create a whole video on this, so I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but basically that's what notice of federal tax lien is, right? And then they also say, hey, look, if you don't pay the amount you owe or make alternative arrangements to pay or request a CDP hearing by March 1st, in this case, that's 30 days after the date of the letter, they may take collection action, levy/seizure against your property or rights to property, such as your wages and Social Security benefits and real estate, automobiles, business assets, bank accounts, accounts receivable, other income, right? They can really wreck your life if you don't deal with this situation promptly. They can also mess up your travel plans, believe it or not. Yep. If you owe enough in back taxes, and what enough means kind of changes every year. It's currently $62,000. Okay. Then, well, it's not just that. Also, the IRS must have actually taken levy against you for this debt at some point in the past, which it probably wouldn't have if you're just receiving the CDP hearing notice. But if you don't deal with this, that could happen, obviously. Or for which a notice of federal tax lien has been filed for that tax debt. And all remedies, well, it says it in here, and all administrative remedies have lapsed or been exhausted, right? Then what the Treasury Department can do, IRS, they can certify your tax debt to the State Department, and that means you're placed on a naughty list with the State Department saying, hey, don't renew or don't approve, if it's a new passport, or renew an expired passport for this guy or gal because they have tax problems with us, right? If you try to do that, you'll get a letter from the State Department saying, hey, you got to fix your tax issue within 90 days or you're going to have to start you're going to have to start your passport application over again. Oh, and by the way, don't even bother if you haven't fixed your tax issue up by then, okay? I think I've created other videos about the passport thing, link to that one of those videos at the top of the screen. So if you want more information about kind of how this whole passport thing works, watch that video. Don't want to get sidetracked here. Then we talk about penalties and interest. I've talked about these before. The interest, it's adjusted quarterly. It's like 7% right now. It was 8% last year. The fair to pay penalty is generally 0.5% a month. For every month or part of a month that your tax bill goes unpaid. It's 0.5% of whatever your tax bill is. It's compounded daily, not only on the taxes, but also on the penalties and the interest itself. It can be slightly different based on various circumstances. All right, now we have the additional information. This information isn't that useful. Now, this information down here is very useful, who you can contact. This is generally going to be your revenue officer's information. If you can strike a deal with your revenue officer before that CDP deadline, that'd be amazing. That'd be great. That often doesn't happen. And, we do go to appeals for the CDP. So hopefully this isn't the first time you've heard of your revenue officer in receiving the 1058, because they've probably been working your case with you prior to this point, I would imagine, in most cases. All right, there's some enclosures they give you. There's the 12153 to request a CDP hearing. At the back here, they basically show you a table of all the monies you owe. This was for this particular redacted 1058 was for payroll tax liability incurred by one of our clients to the tune of $350,000, right? But for you, if this is individual income tax, it would say like 1040, right? Or something like that right there. All right, so you got this letter 1058 from the revenue officer. It's scary. It's saying this is your final notice before we start taking your stuff. What do you do? What do you do in this case? You find yourself against the wall like this. First thing to do, check this thing for accuracy, right? Especially what it's claiming you owe. Make sure that's right. And then if anything's not right, talk to the IRS, get them to fix it. Next, you're on such a limited time frame here. You have this 30 days to see if you're going to, and by talking to the IRS, I mean talk to your revenue officer about it, right? Any errors, talk to the RO about it. And then really you have to figure out a game plan here, what you're going to do by that CDP deadline, right? If you can work something out that's workable for you with your revenue officer, fabulous, right? Chances are you won't. Chances are, well, I shouldn't say chances are, but I'm just going to tell you the majority of times when we have a client who received the LT11 from ACS or the letter 1058 from the revenue officer or any other circumstance in which they receive a notice of their rights to a CDP hearing, we will request that CDP hearing, okay? And we will work the case, our client's case in that CDP hearing, okay? That's our general rule of thumb. There could be exceptions. For example, if you don't submit the 12153 within that 30-day deadline, but you do still submit it within a year, you will get what's called an equivalent hearing. Now, during the pendency of an equivalent hearing, the IRS is not statutorily barred from levying you like they are with a CDP hearing. They generally don't levy you as a matter of procedure, but they aren't statutorily barred from doing so, and they still might. Okay. But another thing to know about the equivalent hearing is while a CDP hearing extends the 10-year statute of limitations the IRS has to collect a tax debt, the equivalent hearing does not. Okay, and so sometimes there's strategies there, especially if we have a very, very near CSED coming up. And I want to get, this is kind of an advanced strategy. And if you're, I know it's an advanced strategy to kind of use the EH instead of the CDP, but I just want to throw that out there. Okay. Right. So if it doesn't look like you're going to reach a resolution with your revenue officer within that before the CDP deadline, you should probably request that CDP hearing, right? There are exceptions, like I just talked about, where the EH might make more sense. But, for many folks, it's that CDP hearing that's going to be the thing in which they can, plead their case before this appeals officer, right, before the IRS revenue officer starts levying, sending levy notices, okay? But like I said, before you go to that CDP hearing, you need to understand your game plan. You need to know what you want the end result to be. And what's that going to be? It's going to be some kind of tax relief program, like I said before, offering compromise you're proposing, CNC, full payment IA, partial payment IA, maybe look to see if you qualify for penalty abatement beforehand. It's all the things I talk about here on this channel, right? That's really what you got to go in with the game plan is what I'm saying, right? And if you're paying someone to represent you, they should have a game plan of what they're going to that CDP hearing to try to argue that would be a better alternative within the law and within the constraints of IRS processes and procedures to get you into, rather than subjecting you to IRS levy action. You see what I'm saying? Okay. You need a game plan, basically. If you received IRS letter 1058, give us a call. Choice Tax Relief, 866-8000-TAX, 866-8000-829. We know the playbook. We know the game plan when you get this thing. Okay, I know it's scary. Give us a call, free consultation. Or you can go to choicetaxrelief.com, fill out the form on our homepage, and we will reach out to you. I have some other relevant videos for you on the side of the screen. Please watch and enjoy them, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.